So, welcome to the Stellar Hour. I'm not sure it's going to be a whole hour, but I still like the name the Stellar Hour. I am recording this today because of an experience that I had yesterday. I got involved in a Facebook post, which I knew would be incendiary. And I knew by posting on it, I would probably get some negative responses, but I wasn't uh, aware of or anticipating how negative the responses would be and how childish they would be. The good thing is I've really learned something from it. However, it really makes me bummed out because as I've experienced this, I realize just how far we are from being where we need to be and how incredibly effective the programs are in controlling who we are and what we are, and yet we're not aware of it in the same way that people don't think they're affected by advertising. I hear this all the time, oh, advertising doesn't affect me. And I'm like, yeah, that's why they spend billions of dollars of doing it. This is why a person like Clotaire Raphael, who was very involved in marketing, who was a child psychologist, is so integral to all of this. He recognized that if you say to a person, hey, why did you buy like this brush, right? A person will tell you basically what they think you want to hear or what they think will make them sound good, but they won't tell you the real reason because the real reason is unknown to them. It's unconscious. We make these connections without realizing it. And so that's part of what I want to speak about today is that we are really not aware, myself included, as to how much of what we're not aware of guides the way we live our lives, the meaning that we make and what we take from life. It's almost unimaginable to a human who believes they have a high intellect that we can do so many things, that so much of what we can do is outside of our awareness and is unconscious to us. Because how could it be like I perceive myself to be awake? I woke up in the morning, I'm awake, right? Well, am I? What does awake really mean? Does awake mean that I am making my own meaning, or am I making my meaning based on what I was inculcated to believe? Am I making my meaning from what I created in my family or what was created for me and my family? How do I really know? I don't. And this is something that's not spoken about. So people who follow me on Facebook will know that I speak a lot about people who perceive themselves to be woke or truthers. They look to the external world to reveal the truth of the external world, which there is reality to it. However, what about the reality of their own self? What about you? What about the reality of you? Where are you in all of this? So this is what I think is super important. It's not just what's happening out there, because what's happening out there can only happen because of what's happening in here, inside of like my skin encased body. What's the meaning I'm making? It's so ambiguous and it's so paradoxical that I think we get overwhelmed by it. And we don't even think about these types of things, like who's making the meaning. So it's like people talk all the time about what happens after you die. Do you get reincarnated? But who were you before you were born? Think about that. So if we think about reincarnation, what about where did you exist before you were born? Did you exist before you were born? Who were you? What are you? And then who and what are we in this world when we're born into it? Because we know ourselves through the other, the mother, which is like so taboo to speak about today. You know, it's like you don't really need a mother, you just need a primary caregiver. Well, what does that even mean? You do need a mother, you do need a father, and yet we're conditioned to think that what is natural is wrong, that it's to have what's natural is deemed to be traditional and old fashioned, and so it must be abandoned. So, in order to be progressive and postmodern, you must adapt to what you're expected to adapt to, which is not even your own making. You think it's your making, but it really isn't your making. I hope this is making some sense. And what I see happening today is another iteration of human beings being less than what we are meant to be. There's always been a program for us to be less than we're meant to be, and it comes in so many different varieties. But what I really see happening now is this whole thing around autism and Asperger's. Of being less than, and there are people who are autistic, there are people that have Asperger's, and I am not diminishing that, so don't attack me for this. What I will say is Hans and I did a show on this about a year ago about the Autistic Society, and I didn't realize at the time what we were onto. And I am realizing it today because I realized that to deem oneself to be autistic or to say I suffer from Asperger's is the new victim consciousness. Well, the world has to adapt to who I am. I've got Asperger's. I'm autistic. So you've got to change to meet me who I am. And if I'm autistic, I don't have to self-regulate. I don't have to self-differentiate. So when we see the rates of autism and what's happening in the world, how it's now 1 in 68 and it affects 3 out of 4 boys. Come on, there's no freaking way that this is natural. It's man-made, and it's made for people to attach to give them an explanation for why they don't have to be who they really are. Exactly. You are allowed to be who you're not. This is what the system offers. The system offers you to be who you're not. The system loves it when you're not who you are, because then they can take advantage of you. Because if you're not who you are, you're going to be identified by the world. You're going to be identified by your false persona. You're going to be identified by your identity. You are going to be identified by who you think you are as defined by other people, the otherness of the world. Otherness, how you think you exist in the mind of the other, let alone how you think you exist with yourself, because most people don't even know who they are anymore. Yeah, sure, we're bodies. Like, I look like I am an individual, right? But am I? Is my mind individual? Have I cultivated my mind? There are so many. I call it the labyrinth of illusions. It's a marketplace for everything and anything. Whatever you want to believe, it's out there for you to believe. You can do anything and people are going to accept it. But you know what? At the end of the day, you have to live with you. And if you know at some level you're lying to you, what does it all matter? Because the truth is, it is about you. And it is about you coming into alignment with who you are, not with who you think you should be, not what other people say, culture, society, whatever. Those are all distractions to get you to stop thinking about who you are. They're all distractions about getting you to think about how other people think about you. And they're not even thinking about you, which is the crazy thing. They're so caught up in their own selves. And so do you see what we're doing? Carl Menninger wrote about this in Man Against Himself, how social engineers were able to use these aspects of self and manipulate them to get people to do this to themselves, to get people to be sadomasochistic, to not fulfill themselves. I mean, think about this whole thing of Autistic Society. My friend who passed away in August, my very good friend, I'll never forget when he said to me, you know, Kathy, there's this whole thing of spurgs. People refer to themselves as spurgs. And I'm like, what? And he's like, Asperger's or autists. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. It's like, hey, you spurg. And I think to myself, people really would prefer to be called a spurg or an autist as a way of avoiding themselves, of almost victimizing themselves. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't people who do have these conditions, because they do. But what I'm saying is that society is using this. Social engineers are using this in a way to exploit human vulnerabilities, in a way to exploit people being responsible for themselves, because people don't want to be responsible for themselves. Here's the thing. People prefer, and this is what people don't want to believe, that they want to be told what to do. And that way they don't have to make a mistake. People don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to look at themselves. And yet they will profess that they do, but they don't. And so it's like, it's exhausting. I look around me and I think to myself, I just can't even connect with this anymore. It's like I am surrounded by people who profess to be one way, but I sense that they're in a very different way. They're not doing what they say. There's not an alignment between what they're saying and thinking and what their actions are. What they really want is to still be children. And this is the thing, the infantilization of adults who are really still like children, who think like children. They might be in adult bodies, but they really still think like children. They act like children. They want people to validate them. They are seeking what they never got as a child. And so this is one of the most important things, is how important parenthood is, how important having an attuned mother is to create the experience of mind in mind. People are seeking their sense of self, their mind, in the mind of another, but they don't even realize they're doing it. And then they get pissed off because other people aren't connecting to their mind. And they don't have enough of a sense of self to recognize that they're doing this. So I would just ask, reflect on this a little bit. I'm gonna do another show on it, but really think about it. It's like, where is your mind? Is your mind really attuned to your own self, to reflection? Not to say that you exist in alone by yourself, because the truth is we can really only see ourselves through others. But are you really willing to see yourself through the other? Are you really willing to take the experience and the feedback to experience who you are in this world? So I will talk to you soon.